In one of my previous videos, the Dark Souls 3 What Went Wrong video, which by the way is doing really well, despite a lot of dislikes which I fully expected, as that comes second nature with criticism videos such as this one, the majority of comments is full of people discussing their likes and dislikes with the game, and it's opened up a huge topic of conversation, which is what my initial goal was. So thank you guys for that. In the next couple of videos I'll be putting out alongside my lore videos will be follow-up videos for various points I made, expanding on certain topics I talked about. And now I have this platform to discuss what's going on in my head and to put it into a somewhat physical piece of media, I feel a lot more justified for making these comments. It's a lot different criticising a game with your group of friends and criticising a game for the whole world to see. Anyway, one topic I really want to get into, which I talked about briefly, was difficulty. In the video I mentioned, it's not that the games are getting easier, it's the fact that we're getting better at them. I'm not backing out of my statement, but I'd like to explain why I think that, and maybe you guys will fall into the same category as me. Firstly, when we talk about the difficulty in Dark Souls, and how it affects us as a player, we need to separate the player base into groups. And I feel those groups should be 1. Souls veterans. These guys have played, beaten, and put countless hours into the Souls franchise. They know the games well, including enemy placements, movesets, min-maxing builds and item placements. They'll know the lore somewhat and will be interested in the world. Basically, they know the games almost like they know the back of their hand. Number 2. I know this is an awful label to place on someone, and believe me, I hate the term, the casual player. These guys will know of the Souls franchise, they'll pick it up, beat it once or maybe a couple of times and then be done with it. Now, this isn't a bad thing, and please, if someone is classed as a casual player, don't belittle them. Not everyone who plays through these games has to love them as much as we do. People have different tastes in, well, everything, and we have to accept that, and it's perfectly fine. And number 3 is the brand new players. Maybe Dark Souls 3 is their first Souls game. No, I said Souls game. I also mentioned in the What Went Wrong video these games have spawned their own genre. So new Dark Souls players could have played these other games, which would benefit them when delving into Dark Souls 3. These are the types of players who usually give the Souls series its difficult label, and maybe they won't even finish the game as they can't proceed through the game. A comedian called Dara O'Brien said something that is so true for the Souls games in particular, and that was, you cannot be bad at watching a movie, you cannot be bad at listening to an album, but you can be bad at playing a video game, and the game will punish you and deny you access to the rest of the video game. No other art form does this. Like I said, that's so true, especially for Dark Souls. Dark Souls 1 was my first Souls game, and when I first played through it I couldn't get past the Capra demon, and I put the game down for 6 months. Then I made a new character, booted it up with the sole purpose of finishing it, as I wanted that imaginary medal to put on my ego. Dark Souls 1 was marketed as a hard game and I wanted people to know I'd finished it, that I was skilled enough. And that brings me to my next point, skill. Each and every one of you watching this video now has a certain level of video game skill. More importantly, Souls game skill. Think back when you played your very first Souls game. Were you not very good? Didn't think so. I sure wasn't. Now, were you the one of the people who labelled Dark Souls 3 as easy? When I played Dark Souls 1 for the first time, I was what you would call a visual or a auditory learner, and I think this plays into an important part of the mentality behind playing a quote difficult end quote game. When I want to learn about something, I like having it right in front of me so I can see how it's done, whether that be looking at a guide or whatever. Yes, for Dark Souls 1 I used a guide for some areas. Now another type of Dark Souls player, and one I've turned into after sticking with the series, is a kinesthetic learner. Now I learn by trial and error. Now I'm not saying either is better, that's just the type of player I've been sculpted into after staying with the series. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Each individual player is different, and that's quite hard to remember when you're looking at a screen. There's an actual human on the other end, with a different skill set and different learning methods. Now this is all my personal opinion and you can choose to agree or disagree, but let's try and figure out why the Souls games are difficult. Well, this is a question that has plagued my mind ever since I got reasonably good at the game. Like I mentioned, there's other factors that will come into play: skill level, experience, learning methods, and fatigue. Yes, fatigue. When we're tired, we tend to be reckless and don't give much thought into what we're doing. We start pointing the finger, blaming why we died on something that could have easily been avoided. We tend to look at why we failed and not how we could have succeeded. But moving back on to why I think Dark Souls is difficult, like I said, we have to take into account all the things that might be considered difficult. Dying being the main one. We drop our souls, we lose progression in the area and are forced to clear it again or either run through it to retrieve our souls. But we can still retrieve our lost power. Dying has only really cost us time if we were to successfully get our souls back. But so does sitting at a bonfire. Sitting at a bonfire respawns all previous enemies, and maybe that's what garners into the difficulty. In other games, when you've cleared areas, you're done with that area. Nothing will be there when and if you return. Does this give off a false sense of progression? Well, if you were to think long enough about it, kind of. We're still moving forward, maybe not progression-wise, but every time you clear an area, you're gaining knowledge. And as the saying goes, knowledge is power. Knowing where the enemies are is such an advantage to you as a player. I'd like for you to take part in a little experiment that I'm going to be doing as well. Have two characters that are on the same new game level and are around the same soul level with, the same stats. And then when the DLC drops, play through on one character and document your experience. Did you find it difficult? Now hop onto your other character immediately after playing through the DLC again. Was your experience different? I'll bet you it was. One of the main aspects of Dark Souls, which I've said in the past, is the fear of the unknown. What we don't know can hurt us, and how we react to that as a player defines whether we thought the game was easy or not. The main point of this video wasn't really to answer the question, is Dark Souls difficult? Because it's such an arbitrary question, there's just too many factors that comes into play. And I don't want to justify the people who said they found it easy. And I don't want to discourage people who are finding it hard. If you find it easy, great. But please don't belittle people who are finding it hard. If you're finding it difficult, keep hitting that brick wall. New players to the Souls franchise, you'll get through it eventually, just have a little patience. And us Souls vets will be waiting on the other side of that wall with a helping hand. We want you with us, and we believe in you. Take care everyone, be good to one another, and have a great day.